take a problem like immigration, right now, the intuition that's driving the left, let's take the extreme case of an open borders ethic. You know, borders are illegitimate. Borders are just in principle a sign of selfishness and xenophobia and unearned privilege, right? None of us can take credit for the fact that we were born into the societies we were born into, and yet we have all of the advantages of having been born there, and so it is with all of you. None of us are currently living through the civil war in Syria now, and that's a good thing for all of us. And so the concern here is that the moment you say, well, immigration is potentially a problem, right? We can't just throw open the borders to all of humanity, because what would happen? What would happen is people would continue to cross those borders until the level of well-being in the developed world diminished so much that there was no reason to cross the borders anymore, right? It would be just some principle of osmosis, right?
It's even worse than that.
But the concern is that this is totally, ethically speaking, this is a totally illegitimate situation. And to shine a bright enough light on any particular story in Syria, say, you give me the right family with children, and I learn enough about them and their plight, and I recognize within 30 seconds that if I were them, I would be desperate to get to Dublin or New York or San Francisco or anywhere but Syria. Right? And it seems like a completely, it seems evil to in any way perpetuate this lottery, where you pulled a bad ticket, and sorry, this defines the rest of your life and the lives of your children. There is no bright line where any of us, well-meaning people, wherever we are on the political spectrum, or wherever we are on any other question, there's no bright line where we can say, aha, that's the solution that we know is ethical, we know we can defend against all comers, and it can survive every test of narrative. I mean, this goes straight to the power of stories. You tell people a compelling enough story about one little girl, and it changes policy. Isn't that what happened to Angela Merkel? She just was faced with one denied refugee, and all of a sudden the policy for Europe changed. And so this is, again, I'm not saying there's a solution to this, but this is the fear, that there's an imputation of callousness on the part of I'm speaking specifically to you, Douglas, because this has been your issue more than ours. How callous must you be to be worrying about immigration? And that's obviously there's a counter argument from the right side, but there's an ethical core to it that is difficult to dismiss.
And this is something which, I mean, it's not just that issue, it's almost every issue. We were talking about a bit about this dinner, that we seem not to be, well, we just aren't ready for the communications age we're in. And we're just not ready for it. Our brains are not yet able to cope. Let me give an example. The notion of private and public speech is just basically evaporated. So that this is the problem. Try out an idea with your friends. Just throw around an idea. We've all done it. Throw around ideas with your friends if even one person is videoing it and might post it. This world we're all in. It's too dangerous to try things out for most people.
That's a problem of no borders.
And so this is it. So we are always vulnerable that for instance, most people in Europe, for instance, want borders. I mean, like overwhelming majority in every country want there to be borders. But if you show them footage of somebody being turned away at a border that morning, we don't know what to do with it. We have abstract principles we need to abide by, we want to abide by, everybody wants to abide by it, but we don't know what to do in this era. And I think we've just got to, among other things, work in all sorts of ways to find ways to think about this sort of deeper than the ones we've managed so far. One of them, yes, is to cope with the idea of the unbelievable luck that we've all got. Unbelievable luck. And then the questions from that. If I'm lucky, what are my priorities?
What are my obligations?
What are my obligations?
Because I'm lucky. What are my obligations?
And some people say my obligation is to share my home with the rest of the world. In fact, it's not that. It's worse than that. Because I know lots of people who've taken in a refugee and things like that. Okay, and I have unbelievable admiration for them. That's really working with them. But it's a different thing.
People who called your bluff when you said, I don't see you taking in refugees into your home. And they said, well, there's one in the living room right now.
I always wanted to turn up to their houses with some refugees and say, I've got yours.
There also are 50 in the living room.
Exactly.
Right? And then okay, so let's elaborate on this a bit more. Okay, so the issue is borders exclude. Right? That's a postmodern proposition. Maybe you can take that even further. Borders exclude and privilege those within the borders. It's like, yes. Okay, so let's take that seriously. And part of the seriousness is poor, innocent children are hurt at borders. That happens all the time. Okay, the question is, are you willing to give up the borders? Now let's think about what borders are. Your skin is a border. Okay? And your prejudice in protection of your skin. For example, you won't just sleep with anyone. You reserve the right to keep that border intact, right? And to be choosy about the manner in which it's broached. You likely have a bedroom. It probably has walls. You have clothing. You have a house. You have a town. You have a state. You have a country. And those are all borders. It's borders within borders within borders within borders. And you need those borders because otherwise you will die. So we could not be too hypocritical about the damn borders. It's like we don't know how to organize fragile things without putting boundaries around them. You see that in Genesis, right? As soon as people realize that I'm sneaking in a little religion. As soon as people realize, they become self-conscious, they wake up and realize their vulnerability, the first thing they do is manufacture a border between them and the world. And we need borders between us and the world. And we pay a bloody price for borders. And I say those words very carefully. We pay a bloody price for borders, and it's often in the price of other people's blood. And so then the question might be, well, how should you conduct yourself ethically in a world where other people are paying in blood for your borders? And the answer that I've been trying to communicate to people is, get your damn house in order. Bear as much responsibility as you can. Act as effectively as you can as an individual in the world. Because then you can justify your privilege. You can justify your luck and your good fortune. And maybe within the confines of your border, you can be more productive and useful than you would be in the absolute absence of borders altogether. And it seems to me that that's the case. And then we have to have a discussion, okay? The left doesn't like borders and the right is more fond of them, and they're both right. And so because we don't know how strict the border should be or how permeable it should be. It shouldn't be absolute, so nothing moves between borders. Everything dies then, but if the borders disappear, then we can't survive. So we have to have a discussion about borders all the time, and that's partly what we're doing here. We have to be more sophisticated about these sorts of things.
Very few people end up getting held accountable for their own views in this matter, among so many others. There's an enormous amount to gain by saying something that's wrong, and there's very little to gain by saying something that's right on this. I mean, it's just a world of suffering. And look, the problem with this, I mean, look, this is your area of politics more than it is mine, but these lines that have been put down on the left at the moment, of which this is one, these other ones that are now coming up, I mean, today's one, you can't now act a role that you're not.
Scarlett Johansson, yeah.
You can't pretend to be someone else. Like, this is a brand new rule. I'm talking about Scarlett Johansson, who was cast in the film as a
transgender woman, I think.
A man will become a woman.
It might have been the other way around, but it scarcely matters.
Oh, it matters. That's your fascist movement.
Yes, that's my
It's interesting because that's actually a boundary too. That's actually a border too. So it's another case where these things reverse in a perverse manner.
But like, where did that one come from?
Yeah. Well, it probably came from the West Coast.
Exactly.
Yeah. But, yeah, it seems to me that we need to somehow get comfortable with the increasingly public moments of uncertainty on topics like this, because so much of safety, reputational safety, as you were just alluding, is predicated in the public sphere in either pretending to be certain or falsely being certain on a safe answer, a safe and wrong answer to a complicated and important question.
Part of this is the pathology of basal instinct. And so, because the rule now is, if I feel sorry for you, I'm good. Right? And so let's say there's a complex situation that requires a tremendous amount of adult cognitive computation to solve. Like, what do we do about the borders? Because tearing them down is not the answer. Well, the person who stands up and says, well, I see someone who's hurt by a border and I feel empathy for them, then immediately says, therefore I'm good, which isn't so bad, but therefore I'm also morally superior to you. And this is one of the true pathologies of the empathic collectivists, is that they presume that their reflexive empathy marks them out as morally superior. And that's appalling, because part of it is, A, it's too easy. Just because I feel sorry for you doesn't mean I'm good. Partly because I can feel so sorry for you that I'm actually harmful to you. And that's what happens in the case of overprotective parents, for example. So we know perfectly well that empathy is not an untrammeled moral virtue. It has to be tempered by other virtues, and carefully tempered by other virtues. And so we have to stop allowing in our public discourse the unquestioned assumption that just because I manifest more pity in the moment than you do, that I'm somehow a morally superior individual. In fact, not only do we have to question that, we in fact have to deeply question it and say, what makes you think that you're just not taking things too far right there? Because there's just as much error on the side of too much empathy as there is on the side of too little empathy. And that's a hard thing for everyone to learn, because empathy feels so good. Like, if you feel mercy towards a suffering child, it's like, that is kind of an indication that you're an ethical person. But that's not the basis for complex and sophisticated foreign policy.
Well, we know it isn't, because we know our empathy diminishes in an almost linear way with the numbers of people to empathize with, right? So we spoke about this one night in Vancouver, but this has been tested, where if you tell someone about the plight of one little girl, you will elicit the maximum empathic response and the maximum of an altruistic response. They'll give the most amount of money they're going to give to any cause to one compelling story to save one little boy or girl. But if you start adding boys and girls to the one, keeping the one the same, people's empathy degrades and their altruism degrades. So empathy is non-quantitative, almost by definition.
It's also partly because in your life, if you see a person in trouble, you might be able to do something about it. But if you see 1 million people in trouble, what you should probably do, at least to begin with, is run. And what are you going to do? Maybe you could give $1,000 to one person, but if you divided that up among 1 million, all that would happen would you would have no money, and they wouldn't be any better off.
But this is to say that so much of moral progress today entails unhooking from the highly salient empathy-driving story and connecting with the actual quantitative reality. To learn that it's 500,000 people dying every year from heart disease, whatever it is, or there's 500,000 people dying in this famine. The fact that can't be made sexy for our news cycle, right? The fact that we lose attention is something we have to figure out how to correct.
Well, it's also akin, it's very interestingly akin to your objection that you raised before, is that there are adult forms of solving problems that aren't akin to children's play, which is something, by the way, I agree with, because I don't think that the manner in which children organize the world is the end of the way that things should be organized. It's the basis for some of the organization. But this is akin to the same issue, is that the basal motivational responses, the emotional responses, no matter how well-meaning, aren't of sufficient conceptual sophistication to deal with incredibly elaborate and complex systems. And then we have another problem too, is that, well, that's really troublesome for people because they want to do the right thing globally. And then you tell them, look, you don't know anything. You don't know how to take this insanely complicated system that we have and improve it. And just because you're feeling pity doesn't mean that you're an expert in the retooling of hydroelectric systems, for example.
And there's one straightforward way to do that. I mean, to give an example, there's a brilliant Kurdish demographer who's a Swedish citizen now, citing this fact that it costs the same amount to bring one refugee and keep them in Sweden as it does to look after 100 refugees in Jordan, Turkey, or Lebanon. Okay. So the obvious thing from that is you say, look, it's madness then to be, for instance, bringing in thousands of refugees to Sweden. You could be looking after hundreds of thousands of people in the region. Why is that still a tainted argument? It's because people aren't sure you're not going to smuggle in racism. That's what I think. Are you sure you're not just coming up with this demographer stuff in
it's
order
like
to...
It's like you're smuggling in Hitler, like
exactly.
religious type smuggling Jesus.
You're going to start with NGO figures, and before we know it, it's Auschwitz. That's what they think. But here's the thing. There's the shortcut solution to answering almost every single one of these problems is assume that your interlocutor has good motives. Yes. Assume that they are being honest in the way that they're looking at it. And that's why I
have
say...
a comment about that. Okay, so this is something I deal with in my clinical practice all the time. Okay, so imagine that you're naive. And then what you are when you're naive is someone who thinks you trust people. Because you think everybody has good motivations, which is some sense what Douglas is recommending. And then say, well, that's just naive. It's like, just wait a second though. Because here's the developmental pathway. First, you're naive and you trust everyone. And then someone cuts you off at the knees. Or multiple people do. Or maybe you cut yourself off at the knees because you trusted yourself too much and you didn't take into account the malevolence that lurks in your heart and the hearts of others. And so then you get traumatized by betrayal. And then you become cynical. And you think, Jesus, I'm a lot smarter now that I'm cynical. And you are. Because cynical is actually a move up on naive. But it's not the last move. The last move is to transcend cynicism and to say that even though I know that there are just as many snakes in your heart as there are in my heart, I'm going to hold out my hand in trust because that's the best way to elevate both of us. And that is the prerequisite for a sensible life.
And to conceive that, this is why I'm really going on about Aristotle on this, to conceive that it's not between good and evil, but between competing virtues. But when it comes to something like the Porter's discussion, you're dealing with justice and mercy. You cannot only be driven by one of those virtues. Mercy itself will lead you to hell.
Yep.
Justice on its own, blind, unseeing, can lead you to hell.
Yes, exactly. Well, and so this also, and we're running very short on time here, so we should figure out how to wrap up. But this is also why your emphasis on truth and the emphasis on truth is so absolutely important, because you and I obviously differ on a variety of different things, and as Douglas does with both of us. But you know, that doesn't mean that I think that you're a bad person. I don't think that. Actually, what I think and what I fervently hope is that some of the things that you think are wrong actually turn out to be right in a way that would be extremely helpful to me and everyone I know if I incorporated it. Like, I really hope that, because I'd rather not be stupid and wrong if I can help it, because then I don't have to wander into a pit. And so I'm hoping that if we can have a genuine dialogue and we can tell each other the truth, which is the crucial issue here, then I can find out what you know that I don't know, and that will make me stronger and it'll fortify everyone around me. And that's the basis for the right and responsibility of free speech, right? You have the right of free speech, but that's so that you can be a responsible bearer of free speech, so that you can say the truth so that you can set the world right and adjust the hierarchies and make sure the borders are properly functional, and so that we can keep this thing going properly. And that is all dependent, at least in part, well, in large part on the truth, but also to some degree on this faculty that you described as rational. Because we're engaged in I know rationality isn't enough, that's my sense, but it's certainly an adult form of communication, and it's definitely the prerequisite to a discussion like this, which seems to me to be highly useful, and which I'm so happy that you're all willing to participate in, how strange that is, notwithstanding.
Yes, well, we've been shown various cards that had diminishing increments of time, and now they have just stopped showing us cards, which is totally incorrigible. I just want to reiterate what Jordan just said there. I mean, you all really are the occasion for this conversation, even though you are in the audience and we're on stage. We very much feel that this conversation is with all of you, and we know the conversation continues in your lives. And again, it's just a tremendous honor to show up and meet all of you in this space. So thank you. We've never gotten together before like this, and it's a great pleasure to be confronted and cajoled and in your company.
Likewise.
Thank you.